Hello everyone, this is Sarah, Painter Creator here. Hope you're having a lovely day, doing whatever, and thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel again for another little paint together. I did this on 2-3 days ago because we were preparing for our Zoom paint together this week using sponges, and there is a little video on that. It's about 5 minutes, and I don't like to have leftover paper or wasted paper, so I've just painted this person with a brolly with an umbrella. So I'm going to try and make something out of this that's quite easy and straightforward and has a little bit of a vibe. So why not join me? So I'm just going to use my putty eraser to take that excess graphite off. Really good tool, these little putty erasers. They're a bit like blue tack, and once they lose their elasticity they're more difficult to use, and if you've got them damp they go into sort of clumpy bits which are not very good. But highly recommended. I've given my paints a spritz so I can go in with my mop brush and just mix up some colours. So I'm starting off with some cerulean blue. It's a bit bright for this sort of time of year, so I'm just going to add a little bit of burnt sienna into it. You could add red light, just wanting to dull it down a little bit to a bit of a greyer day. And I'm just going straight in. I've not wet the back, I'm just going in paint around that umbrella. I'm just putting a little bit of a wash across. Getting my water and I'm just bringing that down into a light wash at the bottom. Just clean water. Got a hair. I always have kitty glitter. I don't want that hole. I'm working on a board that is roughly on 20 degrees. Now I do want the vibrancy of, sorry, I've forgotten to grab my paper towel. I do want the vibrancy of those trees to show through, so I'm just lifting a little bit of that blue away. There we go. And I'm going to add some foliage into there. So I'm just looking, I've got a puddle coming here, so a bit of a thirsty brush. Take your brush, wash your paint, water out and just pick it up. You don't want those run backs. And we're going to just let that dry. Oh, actually, before I do that, I'm going to get the line right on his coat here. There we go. Okay, I'm going to let that dry. In a minute. Just give it a minute. So whilst I'm doing that, I'm just going to pick up my little number 5 round brush and mix up some burnt umber. And some ultramarine blue, classic dark colour. And I'm also going to do some burnt sienna. With some ultramarine blue. A little bit more blue. So 2 classic darks. Let's just do some burnt sienna. With a little bit of cobalt blue, which is a little bit less intense than ultramarine. So I've got 3 darks, so let's just pop a bit more water in here. So a lighter brown, and I'm just going to add a little bit of alizarin crimson into there, into this lighter brown, just to get a redder undertone. That's nicer. Add it across. Add it across. Okay. I like them harmonising, so quite often add across. So I'm just going to give this a little bit of a blast now with, maybe I don't need to. I will, just to be on the safe side, because I don't want it bleeding. Okay, I've just given that a quick blast with a hairdryer, just so that it's not bleeding into the different spaces. And I'm just picking up my little mop brush for a minute, and we're going to start off with this lighter colour, control on my paper towel so it doesn't blob everywhere. I'm popping up the lighter side of some branches. I'm going to put a little bit more water into this mix. So it's going to go lighter, control on paper towel. And I'm going to go back in with my rigger brush in a little minute. So moving on to my mid-tone, my darker value. Just darkening that trunk. And I'm going to put some more leaves on, so we're fine. So that's a mid-tone, dark. Now, I haven't had to water that one down because the water in the system will automatically do that for me. So I've washed my brush, take some of the water out, and I'm just picking this darker colour up. So I'm just going to drop that into this left hand side of this tree, staying on the left. Just drop a little bit more blue and burnt umber into that mix because I want it thicker, so it's going to be more precise. There we go, thicker mix for this one. And I'm going to go back to that middle one and put this thicker mix. It's darker. The other one wasn't really making enough of a statement. It's important that when you go back in like that, that you go back in with a thicker consistency than what's on your page, because otherwise you end up with lifting the pigment off your paper. So I'm going to leave that to dry for a little minute, and I'm going to go and work on this person. So I think he looks a sort of a barber wax jacket sort of green person. So I'm just taking some Viridian green or some Hooker's Green Light, and I'm just going to add a little bit of ultramarine into that, just to get a nice darker, more muted shade. I want this to have the muted shade colours, and then I'm going to put a pop of colour on the trees. So maybe he's got his arm up, holding that brolly. So a little bit of ultramarine in this sort of shadow side, staying on the same shadow side as the trees, so that it reads about right. Letting that do its thing. I'm going to put a pop of yellow, just some cadmium yellow I think, on as if he's got a scarf, and I'm going to let that run down because it's a nice complement into that person. I love how it sort of runs. So let's pick up a bit of this brown and pop in his hair. Trying not to touch that yellow too much. And a little bit of peachy colour, some potter's pink for his face. I've let that yellow go into his face because that will read right, because pink and yellow make a skin tone. And I'm going to drop on a little bit of this green for a hat with some blue in it, because it's under the shade of the tree. So as you can see, not very detailed, but you can, it's expressive. I'm just going to drop a little bit of water. Wasn't quite planning that one, but we'll have that one there. A blob of water for a bit of a highlight. I was going to put one down that side, but it'll be fine. So time to give that a dry, because otherwise if I go back in with the umbrella, we'll end up with a mess. Okay, so we're dry again. I'm just going to do a really watery wash of ultramarine blue for this cat hair on me. I live with cat hair, I think, for underneath here. And it's in shade, so I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of Purple Lake and ultramarine together for a bit of a shadow colour. I'm just going to drop that in. I don't want it so defined, so I'm just going to soften this edge with a little bit of clean water. But I do want that top edge to be defined, so I'm going to leave that for a minute. Okay, I'm going to go back into this and I'm going to change it from this green into some autumnal colours, so I'll give it a bit of a pop. So I'm getting some cadmium orange on my palette. And I'm going to put some new gamboge yellow into one. It's a really orangey yellow and it'll make it really bright and vibrant. And then to the other, I'm going to just put some alizarin crimson and pink. Just clean whatever's off on here. There we go. So 2 nice colours there. And I also want a bit of an orangey vibe. Don't like cadmium orange by itself, so I'm just going to drop a little bit of red into it. And then some new gamboge yellow. There we go, a bit more of a vibrant orange. So last colour I'll need is a bit of a green, and I don't want, I'll use the green that I used on there, which is a Schmeichel super granulating green, but just mix any green, it's fine. And we've got the browns. Put the green and the brown together, look at that. Okay, so I've got those mixed on my palette. I've just damped my sponge using some clean water. And I'm going to put some of this, so just tap it. I'm just going to put a little bit more of this green on the extremities. Wash my sponge. Squeeze the water out of it. That's the important bit, because otherwise you end up with too much water in. So I'm going to start with some yellow. Just tap and pop it in. I love autumn. It's a lovely season. So then I'm going to go for my orange. Just changing the direction so you get this lovely sense of the different colours. Bit of red. And using a sponge is really so helpful. I'm just going to pick up some brown now off my palette for a little bit of a darker patch in there. And those darker tones will just work ever so light when you're touching, and you've suddenly got a tree, an autumnal tree, a fall tree without a lot of effort. We can dry it, we can go back in with it, you can work on that as much or as little as you want. I'm just going to pause and give it a dry. So I've given that a dry, and I can mix some more of the colours up, and so new gamboge yellow. you were wanting to go back in with some brighter colours, just mix another little bit of my green. There's watercolours all around layering. I'll clean my sponge off. So some of this beautiful bright yellow, where the light's hitting it. Some orange into there. So this is where the light's hitting the tracer, bringing that colour out. Remember, it will dry lighter. So just using those same colours to add another layer on. And then I'm going to give that a dry and we'll see where we're at. So here we are, we're back dry, and I think that's a nice sort of autumnal tree, and I'd stop and have a look at that. That's quite nice. If you wanted to do some smaller branches, you can get your rigger brush and just put some little branches in, but I don't really want to do that today. So the last bit I've got to do is his umbrella. So into that shadow colour that I did underneath, I'm just adding a little bit more ultramarine blue. Loading the wash on this side because it's the darker side. And I quite like leaving a little hint of mystery in terms of what's going on. I've just picked up my little number 5 and I'm just going to drop a little bit of indigo into this side of the umbrella to just drop and then picking some of this dark brown up. I'm just looking at the direction of that top bit. Near enough. Near enough. There we go. Just might put a bit of a wash of that brown on his hair. Soften it in. Just to darken his hair. Yeah, it looks like it might be underneath the canopy. Just going to darken a bit of this shadow area too. Quite like that joining in. Like it when things connect. And I'm going to call that one a day for today. So let's just give it a signature. You can always go back in with a bit of pen, get a bit more texture on your trees if you're wanting to. Really good way of just sort of darkening some bits without overly fussing. So they're always darker where they join. You can also draw on some little twigs with a pen. Keep it loose. And you can put a bird on. I haven't had a bird for ages, but I think he's looking at the trees, so I'm not going to distract from that. So taking the tape away from the painting, always, because then if it rips away from your painting and doesn't spoil the thing that you've just spent your precious time, effort and energy on. And there we are, we've got an old man, I think it is, who's stopped to have a look at these beautiful trees on a rainy day. So hope you enjoyed that one, and that you maybe give it a go. Let me know. See you soon. Oh, before that, I've got to say, like, subscribe, all the rest of it, and we do have a Patreon site. I'll put the link in the comments. Right, I am going now. See you soon. Bye.